I was thinking of selling it, Sophia, she said. After all, you've already lived your life. I stood frozen in the doorway of my own living room, my purse still hanging from my shoulder, the smell of antiseptic from the doctor's office still clinging to my clothes. The words hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. My daughter-in-law, Larissa Larry, as she insisted everyone call her, stood by the bay window I had designed 35 years ago, gesturing toward my backyard with the proprietary sweep of someone showing off their own property. Beside her, a man in a gray suit I had never seen before was taking pictures with his phone, nodding as she spoke about original hardwood floors and excellent natural light. "And you," I heard myself say, my voice calmer than I felt, "you've just started to ruin yours." The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the old grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. The clock Arthur and I had bought at an estate sale when Alexander was just a baby, carrying it home together in the back of our pickup truck, laughing at how we couldn't afford it but buying it anyway. Larry turned to face me, and for just a fraction of a second I saw something flicker across her face. Not shame, not embarrassment. Calculation. She was measuring what to say, how to spin this, how to get out of the trap she'd just sprung on herself. The man in the gray suit cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Mr. Wallace. I came to see the property." "To see my property," I interrupted, my eyes never leaving Larry's face. She laughed then, a nervous trill that sounded like breaking glass. "Well, Sophia, I just thought it would be good to explore options." She moved closer to me, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret between friends. "After all, you've already lived your life. This house is too big for just one person. Don't you think it would be better to sell it so we could all enjoy that money? You've already lived your life. 5 words. That's all it took. 5 words to dismiss 68 years of breathing, of building, of surviving. 5 words to decide that my time was over, that I no longer deserved even the roof I had raised with my own hands." I looked at her, really looked at her, standing in the shaft of afternoon sunlight streaming through my window. Her dark hair fell in perfect waves over her shoulders, the kind of waves that took an hour with a curling iron and a mirror. Her nails were painted blood red, manicured and sharp. She wore designer jeans that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, though she'd been between jobs for 2 years. 2 years. That's how long she'd been living in my house, eating my food, sleeping under my roof. 2 years of watching her slowly, methodically take over piece by piece, like kudzu strangling a tree. "Mr." Wallace was already backing toward the door, mumbling apologies, his notebook disappearing into his jacket pocket. "I'm very sorry for the confusion, Mrs. Morgan. I was told—" "I know what you were told," I said, my voice still that eerie calm. "This house is not for sale. It has never been for sale. And whoever told you otherwise has no right over it." He practically ran out the door. When it closed behind him, Larry and I were alone. Just the 2 of us in the living room I had designed in the house I had built, standing on the floors I had helped lay. She turned to me, and I saw her face change. The sweet pretense dropped away like a mask. What was underneath wasn't remorse. It was fury, barely contained. "How dare you humiliate me like that?" she hissed. "I was just trying to help. This house is falling apart. You can't maintain it anymore. And Alexander and you, I interrupted, live here because of my generosity. You eat my food. You sleep under my roof. And now I discover you're trying to sell what doesn't belong to you." She paled, actually went white, the color draining from her face like water from a sink. I just wanted—" "What did you want, Larry?" My voice was still calm, but every word was as sharp as a scalpel. "To take my house from me while I'm still breathing. To leave me with nothing because you decided I'm not worth anything anymore." She didn't answer. Her lips trembled, but no words came out. I walked toward her. Even though I'm 6 inches shorter than her in that moment, I felt like I was towering over her. "This conversation isn't over," I whispered. "But I'm going to give you some advice. You better pray your husband doesn't find out about this before I decide what to do with you." I turned and walked up the stairs to my bedroom, my legs barely holding me, but I couldn't let her see it. I couldn't let her know that inside I was falling to pieces. I locked the door behind me, sat on the edge of my bed, the same bed where I had slept with Arthur for 30 years, where I had cared for him in his final days, where I had cried his death until I had no tears left. And only then, in the silence of my own room, did I let the tremor in my hands spread through my whole body. "You've already lived your life. How dare she? How dare she look at me and decide that my time was over, that I no longer deserved even the roof I built with my own hands? I clenched my fists in my lap, because that was the problem. Larry didn't know who I was. She didn't know this house wasn't just walls and windows. It was my work, my design, my sacrifice. And worse, she didn't know how far I was capable of going to protect it. But she was about to find out. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass of the window. Outside, I could see the lemon tree Arthur and I had planted when Alexander was born. It was massive now, its branches heavy with fruit, shading half the backyard. I had been unstoppable once. Before my hair turned silver, before my hands developed these age spots, before my knees started to protest every morning. I had been a woman who didn't wait for permission or validation. I closed my eyes and let myself remember. My name is Sophia Morgan. I'm 68 years old now, but there was a time when 68 seemed like a distant eternity. There was a time when I was unstoppable. I saw myself at 33, my dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, my hands stained with ink and plaster dust, leaning over a drafting table in a tiny office that barely had windows. I had just gotten my architect's license in a world that still looked sideways at women with hard hats and blueprints under their arms. Arthur worked as an accountant at a mid-sized firm. Alexander was just 3 years old and ran barefoot through our rented apartment, a cramped 2-bedroom place in a downtown building where the upstairs neighbors made so much noise it sounded like they were moving furniture at midnight. "Sophia," Arthur would tell me as we drank instant coffee in the early morning, "one day we're going to have our own house. One that you design. One that's just ours." I would nod, but inside I was thinking, not one day, soon, because I was not one to wait. For 5 years, I worked 3 jobs simultaneously. I designed houses by day for a firm where they paid me half what my male colleagues made. In the afternoons, I taught technical drawing at a community college. And at night, after putting Alexander to bed, I would lock myself at the dining room table and design freelance projects for small builders who needed cheap, fast plans. Arthur never asked me to stop. He never said, "That's enough," or "Get some rest." He took care of Alexander when I had deadlines, made me tea when my eyes couldn't focus on the numbers anymore, massaged my shoulders when the weight of our worries bent my back. "You're the strongest woman I know," he'd whisper in my ear. And I believed him, because I had to. In 1995, after 5 years of sleeping no more than 4 hours a night, of saving every dollar that came into the house, of turning down parties and vacations, we finally did it. We bought the lot. It wasn't big, just under a 1/4 acre in a suburb south of Denver, in an area that was almost rural back then. But it was ours. I remember the day I first set foot on that piece of land. It had rained the night before, and the earth still smelled wet and alive. There were tall weeds and rocks everywhere, scattered like forgotten promises. Arthur took my hand and asked, "What do you see?" I smiled, closed my eyes, and saw everything. I saw the walls rising. I saw the windows letting in the morning light. I saw a backyard where Alexander could play. I saw a big kitchen where we'd cook Sunday dinners. I saw a study where we'd keep the books we loved. I saw a home. "I see our life," I told him, and then I got to work. I designed every inch of this house. Every angle, every window. I chose the orientation to capture the morning sun in the bedrooms. I calculated the height of the ceilings so the heat wouldn't pool in the summer. I designed deep closets, spacious pantries, bathrooms with natural ventilation. But I didn't just design. I also built. Yes, myself. Because we didn't have the money to hire a full crew. So I learned. I learned to mix cement, to lay bricks, to level floors. I learned to use the saw, the sander, the hammer. My hands, which had once only known pencils and rulers, became covered in calluses and scars. Arthur worked with me every weekend. Alexander played among the bags of sand, building his own castles while we raised the walls of ours. It took us 3 years. 3 years of literal blood, sweat, and tears. 3 years of nights where I'd fall asleep with aching hands. 3 years of waking up before dawn to check that everything was moving forward. But in 1998, we finally moved in. I remember how I felt that first night sleeping in this house. We didn't even have our new bed yet, so we lay on the master bedroom floor on a pile of blankets, staring at the ceiling I had planned, feeling the walls I had helped raise. I cried. I cried so hard. Arthur got scared. "What's wrong?" he asked, holding me. "Nothing," I whispered. "It's just, We did it. We really did it. This house wasn't just bricks and concrete. It was living proof that when a woman decides on something, the entire universe has to move aside. The years passed. Alexander grew up within these walls. He learned to ride his bike in this yard. He celebrated birthdays in this living room. He brought home friends, girlfriends, dreams. Arthur and I grew old here. We celebrated anniversaries, mourned losses, planted trees, repainted rooms. Every corner of this house held a piece of us. And then, 8 years ago, Arthur got sick. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. 6 months, the doctor said. He lived for 11. 11 months where this house transformed into a hospital, a refuge, a temple, where I transformed into a nurse, a warrior, a premature widow. I cared for him here, in our bedroom, in that bed where we had slept together for 30 years. I gave him his medicine. I bathed him when he could no longer do it himself. I read him his favorite books. I held his hand while the pain split him in two. And he died here, in my arms, looking at me with those eyes that had seen me build empires from scratch. His last words were, "Take care of her. She's yours too." He wasn't talking about me. He was talking about the house, because he knew. He knew this house was more than a place. It was my legacy, my masterpiece, my proof that Sophia Morgan had existed and had left her mark on this world. After he died, Alexander wanted me to move in with him. "Mom, this house is too big for you alone," he'd say. "Come live with us." But I refused. How could I abandon the only place where I could still feel Arthur? How could I leave the trees we planted together, the rooms we painted, the garden where I spread his ashes? I stayed. Alone, yes, but at home. And now, 27 years after finishing it, 35 years since I bought the land, someone had walked into my living room and decided that none of that mattered, that I had lived long enough, that it was time to sell. I opened my eyes. Night had completely fallen outside my window. The city light twinkled in the distance like fallen stars. I stood up from the armchair, my knees protesting, but I ignored them. I walked to my closet and pulled out an old shoebox I kept on the top shelf. Inside were the original blueprints of this house, yellowed, folded, stained with coffee and tears and construction dust. I unfolded them on the bed, ran my fingers over the lines I had drawn decades ago. Every measurement, every calculation, every dream made real. This house was worth $800,000 according to the current market. But to me, it was priceless. And if Larry thought she could snatch it from me with fake smiles and unknown buyers, she was terribly mistaken. Because I was Sophia Morgan, the woman who built her own castle. And castles do not surrender without a fight. I folded the blueprints carefully, put them back in their box. And then I did something I hadn't done since Arthur's funeral. I knelt by the bed and prayed. I didn't pray for patience. I didn't pray for forgiveness. I prayed for strength, because I was going to need it. The next morning I went downstairs for breakfast as if nothing had happened. Larry was in the kitchen making coffee. When she saw me enter, she visibly tensed. Her hands paused on the coffee pot, her shoulders went rigid. "Good morning," I said in a neutral, almost friendly voice. She blinked, confused. "Good morning, Sophia." I didn't say anything else. I simply took out my favorite mug, the blue ceramic one Arthur gave me for our 10th anniversary, and waited my turn to pour my coffee. The silence in the kitchen was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Alexander came in minutes later with that look of a man who had slept poorly and woke up worse. My son, my only son. 43 years old, a civil engineer, his hair already thinning at the crown with those wrinkles around his eyes that made him look older than he was. He looked at me as if expecting an explosion, but I just smiled. "Sleep well, honey." His confusion was obvious. Yeah, Mom, like always." I took a sip of my coffee. "I'm going out for a few hours. I have some things to take care of." Larry and Alexander exchanged a quick glance. She looked relieved. He looked cautious. I didn't give them time to ask any more questions. I took my keys, my purse, and left the house without looking back. But I didn't go to take care of things. I went to remember. I drove to a coffee shop in Wash Park, one I used to go to with Arthur when we needed to escape the noise of the world. I sat at a table by the window, ordered a black coffee, and let my mind travel back. 2 years. It had only been 2 years since Alexander showed up with Larry. It was an October afternoon, crisp and cool, the kind of day when the aspen trees turned gold and the air smelled like autumn. I was pruning the rose bushes in the garden when I heard the doorbell. I opened the door, and there was my son with a suitcase in each hand and an unknown woman by his side. "Mom," he said with that nervous smile he used when he knew he was about to ask for something big. "This is Larry, my girlfriend. Girlfriend, not even fiancé, just girlfriend." Larry was 32 then. Alexander was 41, a 9-year age difference which didn't bother me in principle. But something about the way she smiled at me, the way her hand rested possessively on Alexander's arm, made something in my stomach tighten. She had long dark hair, perfectly straight, impeccable, blood-red nails, tight clothes that screamed brand names without actually being them. And that smile, God, that smile looked like it had been practiced in a mirror. "So nice to meet you, Mrs. Morgan," she said in a soft, almost childish voice. "Alexander has told me so much about you." I shook her hand. Cold, too cold for a warm day. "It's nice to meet you, too. Are you coming in or just visiting?" Alexander cleared his throat. "Actually, Mom, we need a favor." Of course they did. It turned out Alexander had lost his job 3 months earlier. Restructuring at the company, they said. Last one in, first one out. And Larry, he told me, worked in sales but was between jobs. Between jobs. What an elegant way to say unemployed. "We need to stay here for a little while," Alexander said, not looking me in the eye. "Just until I get something new. A couple of months, max." A couple of months. I should have said no. I should have asked why they didn't seek help from her family. I should have set clear rules, boundaries, specific dates. But I looked at my son, this man I had raised, who had lost his father, who was clearly struggling, and I saw something in his eyes that scared me. Desperation. "All right," I said. "You can stay." Larry smiled, a victorious smile she tried to disguise as gratitude. "Thank you, Sophia. You don't know how much this means to us." Sophia. She was already calling me by my first name. Not even married. The first few days were tolerable. Larry was polite, helpful. She helped clean. She made breakfast. She asked if I needed anything from the grocery store. Alexander spent his mornings sending out resumes and doing video interviews. In the afternoons, he'd go out with Larry to explore the neighborhood, or they'd lock themselves in their room. I tried to give them space. After all, they were a couple. They needed privacy. But then the changes began. Small at first, almost imperceptible. Larry started reorganizing the kitchen. "It's just more practical this way, Sophia," she'd say, moving my pots from their spots where they'd lived for 20 years. She changed the curtains in the living room without asking me. "The others were just so old," she justified. She brought in a new sofa, got it on sale, and relegated my favorite armchair, the one Arthur used to read, into the basement. "This one is more modern," she assured me. Every time I protested, Alexander would intervene. "Mom, it's not a big deal. She's just trying to help." Help by erasing my presence from my own house. But I kept quiet, because I didn't want to be that mother-in-law. The one who complains, the one who interferes, the one who makes drama over everything. So I swallowed my discomfort and smiled. The couple of months turned into 6, then a year, then a year and a half. Alexander found sporadic freelance work, but nothing stable. Larry kept looking, but never found anything that was the right fit. And meanwhile, my house stopped being mine. Larry invited friends over without telling me. They'd celebrate birthdays for people I didn't know in my living room. They used my good china, the set I only brought out for Christmas. They left dirty dishes in the sink for me to wash. When I asked them to contribute to expenses, Alexander would look at me with sad puppy dog eyes. "Mom, you know things are tight. As soon as things get better." But things never got better, and Larry behaved less like a guest and more like an owner. Every day she started calling my house our house, referring to my garden as our garden, my living room as our living room. When her friends asked, she'd say, "Yes, we live here. It's the family home." As if I were just a tenant in my own property. I took another sip of my coffee. It had gone cold. Alexander seemed blind to it all. Or worse, he didn't want to see. I confronted him one night about 6 months ago. It was after Larry had redecorated my dining room without even consulting me, replaced my grandmother's lace tablecloth with some modern geometric thing, moved my china cabinet to make room for a bar cart. "Alexander," I said when we were alone in the kitchen, "we need to talk." He sighed as if he already knew what was coming, as if he was tired of hearing it. "Mom, please don't start." "Start what?" I asked. "Defending what's mine, asking for a minimum of respect." Larry respects you, he said, but his voice sounded hollow like he was repeating a line he'd rehearsed. She just wants the house to look nice, to be a pleasant place for everyone. It was pleasant before she got here. Alexander closed his eyes. Mom, don't do this. Please. Do what reminds you that this house is mine, that you two are here out of my generosity. I know it's your house. He finally exploded, his voice cracking with emotion. You think I don't? You think I'm not reminded every single damn day how grateful I'm supposed to be? I froze. Larry doesn't remind me of anything, he continued, his voice trembling. She just acts as if she has a right to be here. She does, I said quietly. Because I gave it to her. He ran his hands over his face and I saw how tired he was, how beaten down. Mom, I love her, and I need you to make an effort to get along with her. I love her. Those 3 words explained everything. My son was so in love, so blinded that he couldn't see what I saw with crystal clarity. Larry didn't love this house. She didn't love him either. She loved the security, the comfort, the free roof over her head. But I couldn't tell him that. Because when you tell a man that the woman he loves is just using him, he doesn't listen to you. He just hates you. So I swallowed the words. I nodded. And I let him believe he had won. But that night, lying in my bed, I knew something had broken between my son and me. Something we might never be able to repair. I paid for my coffee and left the shop. As I walked to my car, I made a decision. I wasn't going to get my son back by arguing with him. I was going to get him back by showing him the truth. And for that, I needed evidence. Ants don't destroy a house in one day. They do it slowly, patiently, one crumb at a time, one piece of wood after another. Until one day you realize the foundations are hollow and it's too late. That's how Larry took my life from me. Not with one blow, but with 1,000 tiny stings that seemed insignificant at first. I returned home that afternoon determined to observe, to document, to see with new eyes what I had been ignoring for months. And what I saw chilled my blood. I walked in the front door, and the smell hit me first. It wasn't the usual scent, that mix of old wood and flowers from the garden that I loved. It was perfume, a cloying, heavy perfume that saturated the air like a toxic fog. Larry had bought one of those electric air fresheners and plugged it in by the entryway. French vanilla, the label said. I hated vanilla. I walked to the kitchen. There she was, cooking something on the stove. When she saw me, her smile was instant. Too instant. Sophia, you're back. I made chicken with green chili sauce for dinner. My stomach rumbled. I hadn't eaten anything since the coffee that morning. That's nice, I said, approaching the stove. But then I saw the plates on the counter. 2 plates. Only 2. Served generously with fluffy white rice, a fresh salad, and warm tortillas in a basket. And for me? I asked in a casual voice. Larry didn't even look uncomfortable. Oh, I didn't know what time you'd be back. But there's more in the pot. You can serve yourself. You can serve yourself. As if I were a guest arriving late to dinner. I went to the stove. The pot was almost empty. There was just one small piece of chicken swimming in thin sauce. No rice, no salad. The scraps. She was giving me the scraps in my own house. I didn't say anything. I served what was left on a plate, took a hard tortilla from the package on top of the fridge, not from the basket with the warm ones, and sat at the breakfast nook. Not in the dining room, because Larry and Alexander were already settled there, eating, laughing, talking about some show they were watching together. I ate alone in silence, looking out the window at the garden I had planted myself. The chicken was cold. That night I decided to stay awake. I waited until I heard the bedroom doors close, until the hallway lights went out, until the house was plunged into that deep midnight silence. Then I went downstairs barefoot like a thief in my own home and started to look. First, the living room. The furniture Larry had brought in wasn't on sale, as she'd claimed. I checked the tag still stuck to the underside of the modern sofa. Restoration hardware. Each piece cost over $2,000. Where did she get that money if she was supposedly between jobs? I opened the drawers of the new console table she'd brought in. Invoices. Piles of invoices in the name of Larissa Whitmore. Credit cards. 4 different ones. All with balances in the red. I took photos with my phone. Every invoice, every statement I found hidden between magazines and decorating books. Larry owed $11,000 on one card, $9,500 on another. $12,000 on the third, $11,500 on the last one, $44,000 in debt. And she supposedly had no money. I kept searching. In the study, Arthur's old study now converted into Larry's office, I found something else. Printed emails. Conversations with a lawyer named Gerald Thornton dated 2 months ago. Dear Miss Whitmore, in response to your inquiry regarding obtaining power of attorney due to the owner's incapacity, I am writing to inform you that… My breath caught. Incapacity of the owner. She was researching how to have me declared incompetent, how to take legal control of my own property. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the papers. I photographed all of them, every line, every incriminating paragraph. There was more. An appraisal of the house done 3 weeks ago by a company I hadn't hired. $800,000 it said. And a handwritten note in the margin, buyer interested, $15,000 earnest deposit received. $15,000. She had already taken money for a sale I hadn't authorized. I went back upstairs, my legs trembling. I locked myself in my room. I connected my phone to the old laptop I kept on my desk and transferred all the photos. The evidence was there, clear, irrefutable, but a part of me still couldn't believe it. Still wanted to think I had misunderstood that maybe Larry had an explanation. How naive I was. The following days were a silent nightmare. I started noticing things I'd ignored before. Things I'd convinced myself weren't a big deal, like the way Larry held meetings at my house without telling me. Her friends would arrive in the afternoons, women in their 30s with expensive purses and loud voices. They'd settle into the living room as if they owned it. They drank my wine, used my bathroom, left lipstick stains on my crystal glasses. I protested once. Larry, I would have appreciated a heads up that you were having guests. She smiled with that fake sweetness I was learning to recognize. Oh, Sophia, I didn't think you'd mind. You're usually in your room anyway. We're not bothering you, are we? In my room. As if I were an old woman secluded in a nursing home, not the owner of the house. Or the day I came home from the grocery store and found my bedroom door locked from the outside. Why is my door locked? I asked, the grocery bag still in my hands. Larry came out of the kitchen, drying her hands. Oh, I was just cleaning and didn't want the dust from the hallway to get in. It's open now. A lie. When I went in, everything was exactly as I'd left it. She hadn't cleaned anything. She had been searching for something. Documents, probably. The deed to the house. I started locking everything up. My passport, my important papers, the deed to the house, which I used to keep in the study. I moved them all to a small safe in my closet hidden behind boxes of old shoes. And then the worst part began. The dinners. Larry started making elaborate meals for herself and Alexander. Steaks with mushroom sauce, fresh pasta with homemade pesto, roasted chicken with potatoes, desserts, tiramisu, creme brulee, apple pie. But for me, there was always an excuse. Oh, Sophia, I thought you already ate. I only made a little. Alexander and I are watching our portions. There are some leftovers from lunch in the fridge. You can heat those up. Always leftovers. Always cold. Always alone. One night, Alexander and Larry had baked salmon with roasted asparagus and a caprese salad. I could smell it from upstairs, could hear them laughing in the dining room, the clink of wine glasses. I made myself a ham sandwich and ate it standing at the kitchen counter, looking out at the dark garden. My dining room, my wine, my house. And I was eating alone like a beggar. The worst part, Alexander didn't even notice. Or he didn't want to. When Larry had her meetings, she had a perfect technique for making me feel invisible. The house is beautiful, her friends would say, looking around. Thank you, Larry would reply as if she'd built it with her own hands. We've made a lot of improvements since we moved in. We, as if they were the owners. And if I came downstairs while they were there, Larry would look at me with a tight smile. Sophia, do you need something? We're in the middle of a meeting, as if I was interrupting, as if I had no right to be in my own living room. One afternoon, one of her friends asked me directly, "And you're Alexander's mom?" Before I could answer, Larry jumped in with that syrupy voice. Yes, she lives here with us. She's getting on in years and needs company. Right, Sophia, lives here with us, as if they were the owners, as if I was the one who had moved in. I smiled, I nodded, and I went up to my room with my heart in pieces. That night, lying in my bed, staring at the ceiling I had designed, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't sadness. It was rage. A deep, ancient rage born from a dark place in my chest, spreading like fire through my veins. How had I allowed this? How had I let this woman walk into my life and unravel it? How had I let her treat me like garbage in my own home? But the rage wasn't just for Larry. It was for myself. For being a coward. For staying silent. For smiling when I should have screamed. For being the nice mother-in-law when I should have been the owner of my own life. I got out of bed. I walked to the mirror. The woman looking back at me was 68 years old. Wrinkles around her eyes. Gray streaking through her dyed hair. Age spots on her hands. But she also had something else. She had the look of someone who had built empires, who had raised houses with her own hands, who had survived losses that would have destroyed other people. Enough, I told my reflection, and for the first time in 2 years, I felt like the woman in the mirror believed me. There are moments in life where everything changes in a second. A medical diagnosis, a call at midnight, a door opening to reveal something you shouldn't see. For me, that moment came on a Thursday morning 3 days after finding Larry's debts and the fake power of attorney documents. Alexander had left early for a job interview, a good sign finally. Larry was still asleep, or so I thought. I went downstairs to make coffee when I saw the envelope. It was on the dining room table. A large manila envelope with the logo of a law firm printed in the corner. Harrison and Stone Attorneys at Law. The envelope was open. I should have left it. I should have respected her privacy. I should have. But it was too late for should-haves. I pulled out the documents, and what I read took the air from my lungs. It was a power of attorney form drafted in the name of Larissa Whitmore, granting her broad and general powers to administer sell mortgage and perform any act of ownership over the property located at 47 Cedar Lane, Denver, Colorado. My house. My address. But the most terrifying part wasn't that. It was the signature at the bottom of the document. A shaky, irregular signature that was supposedly mine. Except I had never signed that paper. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the pages. There were more documents. A letter from the attorney Mr. Harrison requesting the appearance of Mrs. Sophia Morgan to ratify the power of attorney dated 2 weeks ago. And a handwritten response supposedly in my handwriting saying, "Due to health reasons I cannot appear in person. I authorize my daughter-in-law Larissa Whitmore to proceed on my behalf." My handwriting, or at least a near-perfect imitation of it. I felt the walls closing in. Larry wasn't just planning to sell the house. She had already forged documents to do it. I photographed everything, every page, every fake signature, every incriminating line. And then I found something else. A photocopy of my state ID, but it wasn't my current one. It was an old one I had lost 2 years ago and reported as missing. How had she gotten it? The answer hit me like a punch to the stomach. She had been going through my trash, my drawers, my old documents stored in boxes in the basement. She had been planning this for months, maybe from the very beginning. The sound of footsteps upstairs froze me. I quickly put everything back in the envelope and left it exactly as I'd found it. I went to the kitchen and started making coffee, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst from my chest. I needed help. Real help. That same afternoon, without telling anyone, I drove to the office of David Stone. David had been my partner on 3 architectural projects 20 years ago. He was an architect, but also a lawyer specializing in real estate, a rare combination that had served him well in his career. He was in his late 60s now, with snow-white hair and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. When his secretary showed me in, David stood up immediately with a huge smile. "Sophia, how many years has it been?" He hugged me with that genuine affection only old friends can give. "To what do I owe the honor?" I sat across from his desk, and then, unable to hold it in any longer, I broke. I cried. I cried like I hadn't cried since Arthur's funeral. I cried for the humiliation, the betrayal, the rage I'd held in for months, the fear that I was losing my son, the terror that I might actually lose my house, the house Arthur and I built together. David let me cry. He said nothing. He just passed me a box of tissues and waited. When I could finally speak, I told him everything. Every detail, every humiliation, every document I'd found. I showed him the photographs on my phone. His expression changed with each image, from concern to disbelief, from disbelief to contained fury. "This is forgery," he said finally, his voice grave. It's fraud. Attempted theft. She could go to jail for this, Sophia. I know, I whispered. Does Alexander know any of this? I shook my head. I don't think so. He's blinded. He thinks she loves him. David leaned back in his chair, looking at me with those eyes that had seen too much in his career. Sophia, you need to act fast. If she's already contacting law firms, if she already has forged documents, she's closer than you think to pulling this off. What do I do? First, we're going to that attorney's office. We're going to talk to Mr. Harrison and make it crystal clear that you never granted any power of attorney. That will invalidate any transaction she tries to make. He paused, measuring his next words carefully. And then you need to decide how far you want to take this. Because this isn't going to be fixed with a conversation. This is a legal battle. And your son is going to be caught in the middle. Those words landed like stones in my stomach. My son. My only son. I need to think, I said. Think fast, David replied. Every day that passes gives her more time to complete her plan. I left his office with my head spinning. But before I went home, I did something else. I drove to the law firm, Harrison and Stone Attorneys at Law. It was a small building in a nice part of town, second-floor brass plaque on the door. I took a deep breath and went in. The receptionist greeted me with a professional smile. Good afternoon. How can I help you? I need to speak with Mr. Harrison. It's urgent. Do you have an appointment? No, but it's about a power of attorney I supposedly granted and I've never signed. The smile vanished. One moment, please. She disappeared into an inner office. Minutes later, a man in his 50s came out. Impeccable suit, serious expression. Mrs. Morgan, please come in. He led me to his office, closed the door. Tell me what's going on. I explained everything. I showed him the photographs. I showed him my current driver's license. His face grew paler and paler. Mrs. Morgan, he said finally, I have never processed any power of attorney in your name. I have never received these documents. I froze. What the? Is the logo on that envelope from my firm? Yes, but those documents are forgeries. Someone manufactured them using my letterhead, my name, my signature stamp. All of it is fake. The world stopped. Are you sure? Completely. And this is extremely serious. They aren't just trying to steal your property. They are involving my firm in a fraud. He stood up, pacing. I need to file a formal complaint. And so do you. A complaint with the district attorney's office. This is a federal crime, Mrs. Morgan. Forgery of legal documents. Fraud in the first degree. The person responsible for this could face between 4 and 12 years in prison. I felt dizzy. 12 years. Larry could go to prison for 12 years, and Alexander would be destroyed. I need time, I whispered. To talk to my son first. The attorney looked at me with compassion. I understand, but don't take too long. These criminals don't usually stop at the first attempt. If this plan fails, they'll try another, and another, until they get what they want. I left there with my legs shaking. I sat in my car for I don't know how long, unable to start the engine, unable to move. Larry wasn't just an opportunist. She wasn't just a freeloader. She was a criminal, a professional con artist who had chosen my family as her next victim. And my son slept next to her every night, with no idea who she really was. I started the car. I drove home on autopilot. When I arrived, it was already dark. The lights in the living room were on. I could hear the TV. I walked in quietly. Larry and Alexander were on the sofa watching a movie, sharing a blanket, eating popcorn from a big bowl. A perfect picture of a happy couple. Larry saw me and smiled. That smile I now recognized for what it was. A mask. Sophia wants some popcorn I made extra. My voice came out surprisingly steady. No, thank you. I'm going up to rest. Sleep well, Mom, Alexander said, not looking away from the screen. I went up the stairs slowly, locked myself in my room, and there alone I picked up my phone and dialed David's number. David E., I said when he answered. I need you to do something else. What E? I need you to investigate Larissa Whitmore, everything about her, where she comes from, what she's done before, if she has a record. Everything. There was a pause on the other end. You suspect this isn't her first time. I suspect my son and I are just her latest victims. Another pause. I'll do it. I have a contact who can help us, a private investigator. But Sophia, be prepared for what we might find. I'm already prepared, I lied, because in reality I had no idea what I was about to discover, or just how deep the pit was that Larry had dragged my family into. 3 days later, David called me. Sophia, I need you to come to my office, now. His voice was tense, almost urgent. Did you find something? Not over the phone. Come now. He hung up before I could reply. I told Larry I was going to a doctor's appointment. She barely looked up from her phone. Hope you feel better, Sophia. The drive to David's office felt eternal. Every red light, every turn, every minute seemed to drag like molasses. When I finally arrived, David was waiting for me. His expression was grimmer than I'd ever seen it. Sit down, he said, closing his office door. On his desk was a thick manila folder full to bursting. My contact is a private investigator, David began. I gave him Larry's full name and told him to check everything. Criminal records, credit history, social media, employment history. Everything. He was quiet for a moment, as if deciding how to say what came next. David, you're scaring me. You should be scared. He opened the folder. Sophia Larissa Whitmore is not who she says she is. My heart stopped. To begin with, he continued pulling out documents. Her full name is Larissa Ann Whitmore, 34 years old, born in Phoenix, Arizona. But there's something Alexander definitely doesn't know. He placed a document in front of me, a marriage certificate. Larry is married, legally married to a man named Thomas Bradley for 8 years. They never got divorced. The marriage is still active. I read the certificate, my hands trembling. There was her name, her signature, the date March 14th, 2017. That means, my voice broke. That means her relationship with Alexander is legally... It's nothing, David finished. If they tried to get married, it would be bigamy, a felony. He pulled out more papers. But there's more, so much more. He showed me a police report. Phoenix, Arizona, 2019. Larry was reported by a woman named Patricia Henderson. The charge, fraud. Larry was living with Patricia's widowed son, convinced the family she needed help, and over the course of 6 months, she forged documents to try and sell a family property valued at $200,000. I felt sick. The charges were dropped because they reached an out-of-court settlement. The family paid her $10,000 to disappear and never come back. David moved to another document. But it didn't end there. In 2021 in Austin, Texas, another complaint. This time from a 60-year-old widower named Robert Sullivan. Larry became his girlfriend, moved into his house, and in less than a year she had drained his bank account. Over $23,000. More papers, more complaints, more victims. In 2022 in Santa Fe, New Mexico, an entire family. She convinced them she was a real estate agent. Scammed them out of $15,000 as a down payment on a house that never existed. Every document was a hammer blow to my chest. And now she's here, David finished. In your house, with your son, following the exact same pattern she's used for years. I couldn't breathe. Literally, I couldn't get air into my lungs. Alexander was all I could say. Alexander is with a professional con artist. A predator who picks vulnerable targets and bleeds them dry, David said. Yes, he leaned forward. Sophia, this woman is dangerous. She's not just trying to steal your house. This is what she does. It's her life, her profession. And the husband, Thomas Bradley. We tracked him down. He lives in Phoenix, works as a mechanic. When my investigator spoke to him, he said Larry just disappeared 3 years ago. Took money jewelry documents. He looked for her for months, but eventually gave up. David put a photograph on the desk. A man in his early 40s in mechanic's overalls standing in front of a garage. He never filed for divorce because, in his words, why waste money on a lawyer for someone I hope I never see again? I leaned back, feeling like my entire body weighed 1,000 pounds. He's willing to testify, David continued, to confirm their marriage is still active and to swear to everything Larry told him. What did she tell him? David's jaw tightened. 2 months ago, Larry contacted Thomas, asked to borrow $5,000, said she had an investment opportunity. He paused. Thomas refused, but he told my investigator something more interesting. Larry bragged about Alexander. She told Thomas and I, quote, that she'd found a fool with a house and an old woman who's on her last legs. She said in a few months she'd have enough money to disappear again. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Not for me. I already knew who Larry was. But for Alexander, my son, the man who was working 18 hours a day sending out resumes, who lay awake at night worried about his future, who loved that woman with every fiber of his being, he was just a fool to her, a tool, a means to an end. Thomas is willing to testify, David said again, to swear to everything Larry told him, and to confirm their marriage is still active. Good, I said, my voice colder than I'd ever heard it. Because it's almost time. Time for what? To spring the trap. That night I sat in front of my laptop and reviewed everything we had. Videos of Larry stealing from me. The cameras David's team had installed had caught her going through my desk, my drawers, even trying to pick the lock on my closet safe. Audio recordings of her phone calls planning the fraud, the forged documents, proof of her active marriage, testimonies from past victims, the attorney's statement, bank records showing the pattern of my withdrawals followed by her purchases. It was enough, more than enough, but it was missing one thing, the perfect moment, the final blow that would make it all come crashing down. And then I had an idea David called risky and potentially explosive, but I called it poetic justice. The plan was simple in theory, brutal in execution. I was going to give Larry exactly what she wanted, a weak, confused victim ready to be manipulated. And then when she thought she had won, I was going to show her who had been playing whom all along. But for it to work, I needed to give the performance of a lifetime. David, I said when we met at a coffee shop far from my house, I need you to contact Mr. Wallace, that buyer Larry brought to the house. And do what? Tell him the owner is interested in selling. Tell him to contact Larry directly to coordinate a second visit. David frowned. You're going to give her more ammunition. I'm going to give her the world. And when she's completely wrapped up in it, when she thinks she's already won, I paused. Then I'm going to pull. He understood immediately. A slow smile spread across his face. You're more cunning than I remembered Sophia. Life taught me to be. Mr. Wallace contacted Larry 2 days later. I heard the entire conversation from my room thanks to the hidden microphones David's team had installed throughout the house. Miss Whitmore, this is Mr. Wallace. I was contacted by an attorney, Mr. Stone. He said the owner is ready to move forward with the sale. Larry's voice was practically singing. Yes, that's right. My mother-in-law has finally seen that it's for the best. Wonderful. Could we coordinate a second visit? I'd like to bring my architect to check the foundation this time. Of course. How about next Friday in the afternoon, around 4 o'clock? That's when my mother-in-law is usually resting. Resting. Code for when she's confused and easy to manipulate. Excellent. We'll see you Friday at 4 p.m. When Larry hung up, I heard her let out a little squeal of excitement. Then she dialed another number. Babe, it worked. The buyer wants to see the house again. No, your mom is totally on board. I told you she was caving. I just need you to help convince her one more time. Okay, be sweet to her. Tell her it's for our own good. My son, my own son, being used as the final tool of manipulation. That night Alexander came into my room. He knocked softly before entering. Mom, can I talk to you? Of course, honey. I closed the book I was pretending to read. Sit down. He sat on the edge of my bed with that hunched posture he got when he was worried. The same posture he'd had as a little boy when he needed to confess something. Larry told me you're considering selling the house. Oh, yes, I sighed theatrically, making sure to sound tired, older than my years. I'm just so tired, Alexander. This house is too much for me, and you two need to start your lives. Mom, you don't have to do this for us. But I want to. I took his hand. It was cold, clammy. You're my only son. I want to see you happy, settled. And if selling this house gives you and Larry the chance to start fresh. I let the sentence hang there, watching the conflict play out in his eyes. Part of him knew this was wrong. I could see it, that small voice in the back of his mind screaming that something wasn't right. But another part, the part that loved Larry, the part that wanted to believe her, was winning. Are you sure, Mom? Completely. A lie. The biggest lie I'd ever told my son. Just promise me one thing, I said. Anything. That you'll be smart with the money. That you won't waste it. That you'll build something good with it. Alexander hugged me then, wrapped his arms around me like he used to when he was small and afraid of thunderstorms. I promise we will, Mom. I promise we'll do this right. When he left my room, I had to bite my lip until it bled to keep from crying. Because my son, my good, naive son, had no idea he was a pawn in her fraud. The next few days were pure theater. I began acting as if I were in the early stages of dementia. I'd get confused in conversations, forget names, repeat questions. Larry, what day is it today? It's Wednesday, Sophia. Oh, Wednesday. I'd pause, looking confused. And what was I going to do today? I could see her eyes light up every time, see her mentally noting every lapse, every sign of weakness. One afternoon, while Larry and I were alone in the kitchen, I dropped the perfect bait. Larry, I said, my voice trembling slightly, I need you to help me with something. Of course, Sophia. What is it? It's just, there's so much paperwork, so many things to sign. The bank called yesterday and I didn't understand a word they said. I put my hand to my head. I just feel like my mind isn't working like it used to. Larry moved in with that fake compassion she had perfected. Don't you worry. That's what Alexander and I are here for, to help you. Really, I looked at her with watery eyes. Because I was thinking, maybe I should give you power of attorney, so you can handle things. You're younger. You understand all this modern stuff. Larry's eyes lit up like it was Christmas morning. Well, if you think that's necessary, Sophia, I'd be happy to help. I just don't want to be a burden. You could never be a burden. She took my hands, cold, calculating hands. Let me help you. We'll go to the lawyer together. We'll get all the papers fixed up proper and legal so you can have peace of mind. You do that for me. Of course, Sophia. We're family. Family. The word tasted like poison. Then tomorrow, I said, let's go tomorrow and fix everything. That night I called David. Tomorrow she's going to try to take me to a lawyer. Which one? I don't know, but I bet it's not a real one, or it's a corrupt one she works with. Are you going to go? I'm going, and you're going to follow us. Sophia, this is dangerous. I know, but I need evidence of her attempting to finalize the fraud. I need it recorded, documented, irrefutable. There was a pause. All right, but you're wearing a wire, and I'll be half a block away the entire time. The next morning, Larry was radiant. Sophia, so glad you're up. I already made an appointment at the lawyer's office for 11. So quickly. Well, he's a very busy man. We were lucky to get a slot. Of course, because he probably wasn't a real lawyer at all. I dressed slowly, acting out every movement as if it were difficult. David had given me a small device that looked like a decorative brooch, but was actually a camera and audio recorder. Do I look okay? I asked Larry, gesturing to the brooch on my blouse. You look beautiful, Sophia. She had no idea she was recording her own conviction. We got into Larry's car, a red Honda Civic she'd bought on sale 6 months ago. She drove with the smile of a cat that had cornered a mouse. You'll see, she said. After today, everything will be so much easier. You won't have to worry about a thing. Thank you, dear. I used the word intentionally. I don't know what I'd do without you. The law office was in a neighborhood I didn't recognize. In an old building with peeling paint graffiti on the walls, broken windows on the ground floor. Nothing like the professional offices I knew. We went up to the second floor. The plaque on the door said Mr. Bishop, attorney at law. We entered a small, poorly lit office that smelled like damp and old coffee. A man in his 50s, overweight, with a cheap suit that didn't quite fit, greeted us with an oily smile. Mrs. Morgan, such a pleasure. Come in, come in. He gestured to a chair in front of his desk. Larry sat next to me, holding my arm as if I were a frail child who might fall at any moment. Well, the fake lawyer began, I understand you wish to grant a general power of attorney to Miss Whitmore here. That's right, I said in a weak voice. I'm just so tired. I need help. Perfect. I have the document right here all prepared. He pulled out some papers. I just need you to read it and sign. He passed me the document. I started to read it slowly, squinting as if I was having trouble seeing the words. It was exactly what I expected. A sweeping power of attorney giving Larry total control over all my assets to sell, mortgage, dispose of everything. Is it ready? I asked, feigning confusion. But we just got here. Oh, Miss Whitmore sent me all the information ahead of time, the fake lawyer explained smoothly, to speed up the process. You know, at your age, it's best not to tire you out with too much running around. At your age. Very considerate, I murmured. Larry squeezed my arm. Sign here, Sophia. And here. And here. I took the pen. moved it toward the paper, and then I stopped. "You know what?" I said, putting the pen down. "I think I'd better think about this a little more." The atmosphere in the office changed instantly. It was like someone had sucked all the air out of the room. "Excuse me," Larry said, her voice tight. It's a big decision. Maybe I should talk to Alexander about it first." "But you did talk to Alexander, Sophia. He's on board." "Oh, did I?" I looked genuinely confused. I don't remember. Last night, Sophia. Did you forget already?" Her voice was getting irritated, the sweet facade cracking. The fake lawyer chimed in. "Mrs. Morgan, I'd really recommend you sign today. These appointments are very difficult to reschedule. But I'm just not sure." I put my hands to my head. "My head is all fuzzy today. Maybe another day." "No," Larry almost shouted. She composed herself instantly. "I mean, Sophia, we're already here. Mr. Bishop did us the favor of seeing us on such short notice. Just pick up the pen and sign. It's for your own good." "For my good?" I looked her directly in the eyes. And for the first time in weeks, I let her see something real in my gaze. Something hard. Something dangerous. "Or for yours?" She turned pale. Actually went white. The fake lawyer tried to intervene again, but I was already standing up. "You know what I think I'm going to leave. I don't feel well." "Sophia, wait." I said, "I'm leaving." My voice was firmer than it had been in weeks. Stronger. The voice of the woman who had built a house with her own hands. I walked to the door. Larry followed, trying to stop me, but I was already in the hallway. I went down the stairs as fast as I could. I heard Larry behind me calling my name, but I didn't stop. I burst out onto the street, and there was David waiting in his car half a block down, exactly as planned. I jumped in. "Go." He obeyed without question. I looked in the side view mirror. Larry had come out onto the sidewalk, looking around wildly, her phone in her hand, with an expression of barely disguised panic. "Did you get it all?" David asked. I touched the brooch on my blouse. "Every last word." "Then it's almost time." "Yes," I said, feeling my heartbeat strong and steady. "It's almost time for Larry to meet the real Sophia Morgan." 3 days passed. 3 days in which Larry tried to act as if nothing had happened. 3 days of forced smiles and questions disguised as concern. "Are you feeling all right, Sophia? You seemed so upset at the lawyer's office." "I'm perfectly fine." I'd answer, my voice neutral. I gave her no explanations. I gave her no peace. I just gave her silence. And silence, I discovered, was the most powerful weapon of all. I watched her squirm, watched her mind work, trying to figure out what went wrong. If I suspected something, if she needed to change her strategy. But she didn't know it was already too late. On Wednesday afternoon, while Larry was in the living room on a hushed phone call, I was in my room coordinating the final move. "David," I said over the phone, "it's time. Arrange the dinner for Friday." "Are you completely sure there's no going back after this?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." "All right. I'll contact everyone involved. Thomas Bradley confirmed he's flying in from Phoenix tomorrow." "And Mr. Wallace?" "He confirmed too, though he's still confused about why you're inviting him to dinner. He'll understand on Friday." "And Alexander, have you told him?" That question stung. "No. He's going to find out with everyone else. I need him to see it all at once. It's the only way." There was a pause. "This is going to hurt, Sophia." "I know, but the pain of truth is better than the comfort of a lie." On Thursday night at dinner, I dropped the final bait. "Larry, Alexander," I said as we ate in uncomfortable silence, "I want to host a family dinner on Friday night." They both looked at me surprised. "A dinner?" Alexander asked. "Yes. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I think it's time to resolve things, to talk about the future with clarity." I looked at them both. "I want to invite a few important people so we can make decisions together, as a family." Larry's smile returned instantly, like a light switching on. "That sounds perfect, Sophia. Who do you want to invite?" "My lawyer, David Stone, Mr. Wallace, that buyer you brought over, an attorney who can advise us on the paperwork." I paused. "And a few other people I think should be present." "Other people?" Larry's smile faltered slightly. "It's a surprise, but I promise you everything will be very clear by Friday night." Larry tried to hide her unease, but I saw it, that shadow of doubt crossing her face. "Sounds nice," she said finally. "Excellent. Dinner will be at 7. Dress nicely. I smiled. It's going to be a memorable night. She had no idea just how memorable. Friday dawned with a clear sky, ironic considering the storm that was about to break. I spent the morning cooking. I made my pot roast the recipe Arthur had loved, mashed potatoes with butter and cream, green beans with almonds, and homemade apple pie for dessert. The smells filled the house, and for a moment I could almost feel Arthur's presence. Could almost hear him saying, "Smells like heaven, Soph." Larry watched me from the kitchen doorway, her expression confused. "Do you need help, Sophia?" "No, thank you. I want to do it myself today." "But it's so much work." "I like cooking. It reminds me of better times." I looked at her. Times when this house was filled with love instead of lies. She flinched, but said nothing. At 5 o'clock, I began to set the dining room table. I brought out the good china, the set I only used on Christmas. The silver cutlery Arthur's mother had given us as a wedding gift. The crystal glasses we'd bought on our 20th anniversary. The table looked beautiful, elegant, dignified, like a stage for what was to come. At 6, I took a long bath, put on a navy blue dress I hadn't worn since Arthur's funeral, did my makeup carefully, put my hair up in an elegant bun. When I came downstairs, Alexander looked at me stunned. "Mom, you look beautiful." "Thank you, honey." I kissed his cheek. Today is an important day. Larry came down minutes later in a tight red dress, high heels, too much makeup. She looked like what she was, a desperate woman trying to impress. At 7 o'clock on the dot, the doorbell rang. "I'll get it," I said. It was David. Impeccable suit, briefcase in hand, serious expression. "Sophia." He kissed my cheek. "Ready?" "Ready." We walked into the dining room. Alexander and Larry were already seated. Alexander looked curious. Larry looked nervous. "Alexander, Larry, you remember Mr. Stone?" They both nodded, tense politeness in the air. The doorbell rang again. It was Mr. Wallace, the buyer. He looked confused, but polite. "Mrs. Morgan, thank you for the invitation, though I'm not sure I understand." "It will all be clear soon, Mr. Wallace. Please come in." I sat him at the table. Larry watched him with a wary expression. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Gerald Thornton, the real attorney, the one whose name Larry had forged. "Mr. Thornton, thank you for coming." "Mrs. Morgan, when you explained the situation, I couldn't refuse." Larry had turned considerably paler. "Mom," Alexander said, his voice uncertain. "What is going on?" "Patience, honey. One more guest." And then the guest no one expected. I answered the door myself this time. And when I opened it, there he was, Thomas Bradley, Larry's legal husband. A man in his early 40s with a face weathered by sun and hard work. He was wearing clean jeans and a dress shirt. He had dressed for the occasion. "Mrs. Morgan," he said respectfully. "Thomas, thank you for coming all this way." "It's the least I can do." I led him to the dining room, and when Larry saw him, the color drained from her face completely. All of it. She looked like she might faint. "Thomas," she whispered. Alexander looked between them, confused. "Mom, who is this man?" I stood at the head of the table, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. "Alexander," I said, my voice firm and clear, "I'd like you to meet Thomas Bradley." I paused, letting the silence stretch. "Larry's husband." The silence that followed was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop, a feather fall, a heartbreak. "What?" Alexander's voice was barely a whisper. Larry shot up from her chair. "This is a misunderstanding. I can explain. Sit down." My voice cut through the air like a whip. Something in my tone, some deep primal authority, made her obey. She sank back into her chair, her face ashen. I remained standing at the head of the table. Everyone was looking at me, but I only had eyes for Larry. "This dinner," I said, "is about the truth. A truth that's been buried under lies for 2 years. "Mom, what are you talking about?" Alexander looked completely lost, like a child waking from a nightmare. "Let me show you, son." I nodded to David. He took his laptop from his briefcase and placed it on the table, connected it to a small portable projector which aimed at the blank dining room wall. "We're going to watch a movie," I said. "The story of how Larissa Whitmore has been destroying our family." I pressed play. Larissa Ann Whitmore and Thomas James Bradley. Date March 14th, 2017. "Larry is legally married," I said, my voice steady. "She never got divorced. Your relationship with her, Alexander, is legally invalid. You're the other man, not the partner." Alexander stared at the screen as if he'd been struck. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. 4 credit cards, all maxed out. Total debt $44,000. "This is why she's here," I continued. "Not for love, for money. She owes $44,000 and was looking for someone to pay it off." Larry's voice filled the room tinny through the laptop speakers, but crystal clear. "The old woman is caving. Give it 1 more week and I'll have the power of attorney." "No, the son is useless. He does whatever I say." $800,000. I already told you. Yes, same plan as in Santa Fe. But this time it's not going to fail." Alexander had stopped breathing, literally. He was frozen eyes fixed on the wall watching his reality crumble. Larry and black and white security camera footage entering my bedroom when I wasn't home. Opening my drawers. Photographing my documents with her phone. Trying to pick the lock on my closet safe. "She stole $8,000 from my safe," I said. Cash I had been saving for emergencies. The power of attorney with my signature, a signature I had never written. The fake letters to Attorney Thornton. The appraisal of my house that I had never authorized. "She tried to steal my house using forged documents," I said. "Forgery, fraud, theft. Every image was a blow. Every document a stab." Alexander had tears streaming down his face, though he seemed unaware of them. "But this isn't the first time," I said. More images appeared. Police reports, court documents, victim statements. 2019 Phoenix, Arizona, Patricia Henderson. Larry lived with Patricia's son, forged documents to try to sell the family home worth $200,000. Settled out of court for $10,000. 2021 Austin, Texas. Robert Sullivan, 60 years old widower. Larry drained his bank account of $23,000. 2022 Santa Fe, New Mexico. The Kowalski family. Larry pretended to be a real estate agent, took $15,000 as a deposit for a house that didn't exist. Larissa Whitmore is a professional con artist, I said. She hunts vulnerable targets and bleeds them dry. And now it's our family's turn. I turned to Thomas Bradley. "Mr. Bradley, would you please tell us what Larry told you when she contacted you 2 months ago?" Thomas nodded, looking at Larry with a mixture of pity and disgust. "She told me she'd found a fool with a house and an old woman on her last legs. She said she'd soon have enough money to disappear again. She asked me to loan her $5,000 to speed up the plan." Alexander made a sound something between a sob and a choked scream. His hands were flat on the table, trembling. I turned to Mr. Wallace. "Mr. Wallace, you were contacted by this woman to buy a property she has no right to sell. The $15,000 you gave her in earnest money was stolen. David will help you recover it and file your own complaint." The man just nodded, still in shock. Finally, I turned to Larry. She was crying now, tears cutting black tracks through her perfect makeup mascara running down her cheeks. "Please," she begged. I can explain. It's not what it looks like." "There is nothing to explain." My voice was ice, pure cold ice. "You are a professional criminal, a predator who has destroyed entire families, and you thought I would be your next victim. Sophia, please don't call me Sophia." The words came out like venom. "You are not family. You never were. You are a predator who saw weakness and attacked." I leaned toward her, looking her dead in the eye. "But you made one mistake." "What?" she whispered. "You assumed that because I'm 68 years old I was finished, that I was weak, helpless, that you could manipulate me and destroy me without consequences." I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You were wrong, because I built this house with my own hands. I have survived things that would have broken you into 1,000 pieces, and I was not going to let some 2-bit criminal take away everything I've fought for." I stood up straight. "David, call the authorities." "No," Larry shot up. "Alexander, say something, defend me." All eyes turned to my son. Alexander was sitting there, his hands flat on the table, staring at them as if they weren't his. His eyes were red, his face shattered. When he spoke, his voice was broken. "Was any of it real, ever?" Larry opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I did love you." "Liar." The word snapped like a breaking bone. "It was all a lie, from the beginning." He stood up slowly, walked toward her, For a moment I thought he might hug her, forgive her, be the weak man she believed he was. But instead he stopped in front of her and said the only thing that mattered. "I want you out of this house." He paused. "Now!" His shout echoed in the dining room. Larry stumbled back, tripping on her chair. She looked around for support, but only found hard, accusing stares. "You have no right," she started. But then the authorities arrived. 2 detectives, a man and a woman. They had the warrant. Larissa Ann Whitmore. She nodded weakly. "You're under arrest for forgery, fraud, and theft. You have the right to remain silent." They handcuffed her right there in my dining room. On the hardwood floors I had laid with my own hands. As they led her away, she looked at me one last time. There was no pleading in her eyes, just pure, unfiltered hatred. "This isn't over," she hissed. "For you it is," I replied. "It ended the day you decided Sophia Morgan was an easy target." They took her away. The door closed, and the silence that was left was deafening. After everyone had gone, David Thomas, Mr. Wallace, Attorney Thornton, the house was quiet. A different kind of quiet. Not filled with tension or manipulation. It was an empty, hollow quiet. Alexander was still sitting in the dining room. He hadn't moved since they took Larry. He just stared at his hands on the table as if searching for answers in the lines of his palms. I sat down across from him. "Son, don't," he said, his voice rough. "Just wait." The minutes passed like hours. Finally he looked up. His eyes were red swollen. "How long did you know?" "Weeks. And you didn't tell me." "You needed to see it for yourself. If I had just told you, you wouldn't have believed me." He ran his hands over his face. "You're right. I wouldn't have. I would have defended her." A bitter laugh escaped his throat. "What kind of idiot am I?" "You're not an idiot. You were manipulated by a professional." "I lived with her for 2 years, Mom. I slept next to her. I told her I loved her." His voice cracked. "How did I not see it?" "Because love blinds us. And she was very good at what she did." Alexander shook his head. "I treated you badly. I let her treat you badly. I saw you eating alone and I didn't say anything. I watched her disrespect you, and I—" His voice broke completely. "How can you even look at me?" I stood up, walked around the table, knelt by his chair, and took his face in my hands. "Because you are my son, and sons make mistakes, but they also learn from them. I don't deserve your forgiveness. It's not something you deserve. It's something I give, because I love you." I wiped a tear from his cheek. "But I need you to understand something, Alexander. This can never happen again. I need you to learn to value what you have, to respect the person who has given you everything." He nodded, crying like I hadn't seen him cry since he was a child. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." "I know, honey. I know." I held him, and in that hug I felt all of it, the pain, the betrayal, the forgiveness, the hope. "I'll make it up to you," he said against my shoulder. "I don't know how, but I will." "I know how." I pulled back and reached into my pocket, pulled out an envelope I had prepared days ago. "What's this?" "Years ago I bought a small condo, an investment. It's in the Capitol Hill neighborhood. 2 bedrooms, good location." I placed the envelope in front of him. "The deed is in here. It's yours, but with conditions." "Mom, I can't accept this." "Condition 1, I interrupted. "You're going to live alone. You're going to learn who you are without depending on anyone, not me and not any woman." He swallowed, nodded. "Condition 2. You're going to work. I don't care what it is, but you will support yourself with your own effort." "I will?" "Condition 3. Every Sunday you come here for dinner, and we are going to rebuild what was broken, as mother and son, as a real family." His eyes filled with tears again. "Why are you doing this? After everything?" "Because you're my son, and I believe in second chances." I stood up. "But this is your only one, Alexander. There won't be a third." He took the envelope with shaking hands, opened it, saw the deed. "Thank you, Mom. I swear I won't let you down. More importantly, don't let yourself down." He stayed that night, his last night in this house as a resident. The next morning he packed his things. It wasn't much, 1 suitcase, a few boxes. At the door he hugged me tight. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, son. Always." He left. and I closed the door knowing that for the first time in 2 years, my house was mine again. The following months brought peace. Larry was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Forgery, fraud, theft. Her history of prior victims weighed heavily in the sentence. Mr. Wallace got his money back. He even thanked me for exposing her. Thomas Bradley finally filed for divorce. And I renovated my house. Not the structure, the soul of it. I painted walls. I changed furniture. I removed every last trace of Larry. I turned the study into a small architectural workshop. I started giving free design classes to older women who wanted to learn a new skill. Alexander kept his word. Every Sunday he shows up with flowers or fresh bread. We eat together. We really talk. And slowly, very slowly, we are rebuilding what was broken. Today, as I write this, sitting in my garden, looking at the lemon tree that Arthur and I planted 43 years ago, I understand something fundamental. True wealth isn't in what you own. It's in what you refuse to let anyone take from you. Your dignity, your peace, your home, yourself. Larry tried to take it all, but she forgot one essential thing. Women like me aren't built on easy days. We are forged in storms, and when the storm passes, we are still standing, stronger than before. If this story touched your heart, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Has anything similar happened to you? Do you know someone who needs to hear this? Give it a like, share, and subscribe for more real-life stories that remind us it's never too late to defend what is yours. Because dignity has no age, and the old lionesses always have the sharpest claws.